Welcome to the ExecMBA Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Andrew Rader. Andrew is a member of the Part-Time MBA class of 2025, and he completed his degree requirements in December. Andrew and I recently connected to talk more about his background, his decision to pursue an MBA, what led him to Darden and the Part-Time MBA program, his experience as a Part-Time MBA student, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to the ExecMBA Podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Andrew Rader. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. I mentioned this as we were getting prepared for the conversation, but you are the first part-time MBA student who's completed the program to be on the podcast. Amazing.
Oh, yeah, incredible honor. And it's incredible how quickly time has flown, right? It doesn't seem like all too long ago we were sitting in classroom there in Charlottesville and, the inaugural part-time class was kicking off. So it's an odd feeling to already be here, fast forward a couple of years and be done.
Yeah, we've been telling prospective students who are looking at the Part-Time MBA program, this is a big year for Darden's Part-Time MBA program. Not only are we in the process of recruiting the fourth class of Part-Time MBA students, but we'll have our first graduates from the Part-Time MBA program. We had a few students who finished up in December. We have a few students who I think we're on pace to kind of wrap up in J-term, right between the fall and spring semester. And then another group, a larger group that will be finishing in May. I have to ask you, Andrew, are you planning to go down to Charlottesville in May and walk the lawn and do the whole deal?
Yep, absolutely planning on being there in Charlottesville. The folks are planning on coming. It'll be a family ordeal. Everyone's excited to be there. And I always like an excuse to get back to Charlottesville. So I'm certainly planning on attending.
All right. Well, that'll be a wonderful day and another historic day in the history of the Darden School. So before we get into your Part-Time MBA experience, I want to set the scene a little bit and talk a little bit more about who you are and your background. So tell us, who are you? What did you do before coming to Darden? What have you been up to since you've been in the program?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to joke, right? I'm a nerd both by education and by trade. I came from undergrad where I did aerospace engineering. So I like to joke, right? Who didn't want to get into rocket science? I was always fascinated in things that went boom, how to make them go boom. So after undergrad, I furthered my education by getting a master's of engineering. Again, always knowing that I never wanted to be the person that designed bolt number 4 on a rocket, but really wanted to think of problems at large, really challenging problems, open-ended, and really tackle those, again, challenging problems. So then from there, joined the Aerospace Corporation, where I did a lot of consulting for the federal government, in both the DoD and the intelligence community. And then there was this hunger and thirst, right? I think I always knew I wanted to do this MBA, move more into the business world, gradually transition less from a technical engineer into somebody who could understand what this corporate business world looked like. And that's really where that nice natural transition into Darden happened.
All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And for our listeners, just to give you a little bit of context, you may have been surprised to hear that Andrew already had a graduate degree prior to coming to Darden and pursuing his MBA. That is not uncommon for our Part-Time MBA students. About a quarter, 25% of a typical Part-Time MBA class will have already completed a graduate degree prior to enrolling at Darden. Oftentimes, it's a more specialized master's, something that's a bit narrower in focus. Obviously, Darden is a general management MBA program really focused on helping students grow as leaders and as managers. So the two things can be a nice complement to each other. Andrew, you mentioned that you had been thinking about an MBA and kind of shifting more to the business side. What kind of put the MBA on your radar? How did you decide that now was the right time for you to pursue an MBA?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I was gradually moving into roles that were less and less technical as my career progressed. Right. And I found myself at this, I call it this fork in the road, in which I could continue really down this technical path, really hone in on that engineering type prowess. But there was also an opportunity that presented itself to me at work, and really to sink my teeth into more of the project management type role, go and sit on site with a customer and really sit with them and understand what their problems are and help them shape their strategy of where they wanted to go. right? In order to do that, I found, right, I have this great engineering background. I've learned, again, joking, nuts and bolts, but there was still a lot to learn, right? And I've got that hunger to learn and that thirst to learn, and right, that MBA seemed like that perfect avenue to supplement that knowledge that I was missing a little bit, right? And really thrust me into that real world project management, project engineering type role that I was looking for. And the professional degree program allowed me to do that in real time, which I thought was fascinating, and we can talk more about. But really, that professional degree program allowed me to pursue roles that I was interested in, less technical, more business focused, right there in real time.
All right. Well, what put Darden on your radar? Obviously, a lot of options when you decide you want to work while pursuing an MBA, but why Darden for you?
Yeah, of course. Right, Darden is initially just going to catch your eye when it flashes across your screen, and when this part-time MBA program was kicking off, again, it was a time in my life where I was really looking to supplement my knowledge, and the format that was being kicked off, and this professional degree format that Darden was offering was a nice way of blending not only just getting an MBA, but from an institution that I thought had a lot to offer, right? So my previous master's degree was very similar to the case type method that Darden really prides itself on. And I found that to be a learning format that I thrived in and that I really enjoyed. Pairing that with just world-class faculty, right? If you just look at some of the professors that were going to be teaching this inaugural class and the faculty that teaches across the full-time program and the executive, a lot of it's the same faculty. So it was really thrilling to see some of the folks that I would get to engage with, specifically with Darden.
All right. In the part-time MBA program, you joined the first class of part-time MBA students. So you remember the part-time MBA class of 2025? What was it like? How'd you think about being the first class of part-time MBA students through the doors here at Sands Family Grounds?
Yeah, so there's always going to be, a little bit of hesitancy in being the first to do anything, but in being the first to do something, there also comes a lot of excitement, right? And a lot of the way that I would say, and speaking for some of my cohort, right, and going into it, we were really excited to be a part of shaping what exactly the program was going to look like, right? And I think we are really eager with the fact that Darden was continuously and continues to do so, right? Communicate with the students in this relatively new format, right? And understand, okay, in what ways do the students want this to be similar to a full-time type experience? In what ways do we need to offer things that might be more similar to traditionally an executive type program? And it was exciting in being the first ones to help shape what that program was looking like, all while, again, finding that format that worked exactly perfect for my schedule, and my needs.
Yeah, that's a pretty consistent thing that I've heard from your classmates about being in the first class of students, the opportunity to kind of shape the program, to give feedback, to help the school really build, top caliber part-time MBA program, and to kind of figure out what students in this market are looking for. And y'all have been great partners through this process and along the way over your time here. And so I want to talk a little bit more about the program experience for our listeners who may be just learning about the Part-Time MBA program. There's kind of two phases in the Part-Time MBA program. There's what consider the core curricular period when you're doing the core curriculum. It's the first 18 months of the program. And then after that, students enter an elective period. Now, the core curricular period is cohort based. So everybody's taking the same classes together, moving through that part of the program together. The elective period in the Part-Time MBA program is flexible, meaning students can move as fast or as slow as they'd like as they work towards the 60 credits required for graduation. And curious to really get into the details of it. In the part-time MBA program, you take about 34 and a half credits through the core period, and you take about 25 and a half credits or 17 electives through the elective period. So, Andrew, I'd like to start just by talking about the core period. Typically taking about two classes at a time during that period. How would you describe the core to people who are just learning a little bit about the part-time MBA program?
Yeah, so I think the core part of the curriculum is extremely formative, and I personally found it extremely useful as someone coming in without the strongest, I'd say, traditional business background, right? So I found core curriculum to really be a nice offering of breadth across the whole really business acumen type arena. Right. So we were able to, hit the accounting, hit the finance, but also throw in some of the more, I'd say, stretch classes for me, right? And some of the leadership communication and how to lead organizations, and really a lot of material that I would not have personally, right, been thrust into in my past experiences. And what was fascinating is, right, a core tenet of the Darden structure are these learning teams. And I don't know what the magic formula is, but it works. And I absolutely loved my learning team. And I found the core curriculum a great way of being able to tap into those different resources, understanding. I've got the finance expert, on my learning team. So help me, right? Help me understand these finance aspects, whatever it might be. And then the last part I'll say about the core curriculum, right, is there are going to be areas where you think that you're strong or weaker, but where the case method was great, right, was I found even in the courses like decision analysis, where I have a technical background, there was no such thing as cracking the case, which I thought was incredible, right? There, for somebody who even had a strong background in that area, there was still something new to learn within the core curriculum, which I thought was fascinating, and new ways of looking at the problem, finding new ways to explain things that I thought I understood really well to members of my learning team who maybe didn't have a background in that regard. So core curriculum is great to really master that breadth. And I found new areas that I didn't even know were interesting to me by being able to get that great course diversity.
Yeah, so you're not picking your classes during this period. The curriculum is set out for you. At the core in the part-time MBA program is actually the same core that full-time MBA and executive MBA students take. It's the Darden core curriculum. As a general management school, we feel like it's important for students to have this broad foundation in these core business topics before moving into the elective period. I appreciate the shout out for the learning team. For those of you who are just learning a little bit more about the learning experience here at Darden, Darden employs this four-step learning model where it's individual preparation, group preparation, class, and reflection. Group preparation is where you would work with your learning team to get ready for class. And that may sound like a lot, 5, 6 people. You got to figure out everybody's schedule, how to make this work. But learning here is intended to be a team sport. You can work more efficiently as a group than you can just by yourself. And also, to Andrew's point, Andrew, I think you would agree with this. Like the team helps fill in your gaps and helps you get a lot further in your understanding of the case and just what's going on in a given class than you would by yourself. I take it you probably agree with that.
No, absolutely. And I'd even go one step further in that, particularly in a professional degree format. I think, again, coming into this, the new program, a lot of us had this hesitancy of, okay, well, what does a learning team look like for a bunch of working professionals, right? Do our schedules align, whatever it might be? I found that my learning team not only helped me academically, but as a working professional, right, there's a lot of life that happens over the course of 2 years, right? And these are individuals that you really build a significant trust in and a significant relationship with that can help you through the bumps of life that are also happening concurrently throughout trying to work and go to school and maintain families and all the complexities of a professional degree format. The learning team was a great resource, I thought, not only academically, but personally as well.
And it's worth noting that this 18-month core curricular period is bracketed by 2 week-long residencies in Charlottesville. You mentioned you started in Charlottesville with a week-long residency, what's called Residency 1 or R1. And after you've taken all these core classes at the very end of that period, 18 months into the program, you have a second residency down in Charlottesville, what's called Residency 2 or R2. What were these week-long experiences in Charlottesville like? I know it's hard to compress, 2 week-long experiences into just a soundbite. But I'm curious, what was it like to be in Charlottesville? Did you enjoy the experience of being down there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'll go ahead and start with R2, not chronological order, but R2 is one of my favorite things to talk about, and probably very likely my favorite part of the entire program, right? So, as you mentioned, right, this happens right at the end of core curriculum. You've been at class with these same cohort of folks for 18 months, and it was really an excellent opportunity to get away from work, right? For a week, you go down to Charlottesville and you really take classes all week. But I found it great to also connect back to the University of Virginia, right? We were able to do more beyond just strict business, I guess, traditional business learning, right? And that we were able to go and see a lot of the historical aspects of Charlottesville, connect to what exactly the story is of that city, right? And understand how that translates to us as business leaders. We talked a lot about change. Really, R2 was a really impactful time for not only learning, but reflection. And then R1, right? That's a much more, I'd say, busy time, right? That was the true introduction to welcome back to school for many of you, which can again be a scary process, but it's always fun to, you're pulling out your notebook again, your pencils. And R1 was great because you're meeting all of these new people. Darden does a fantastic job of bringing in a super diverse group of folks and just understanding where everyone's coming from and what their story is that brought them to Darden, and understand that we all came from a lot of different start points. But R1 I thought was terrific there, and seeing all the super interesting and fantastic folks that we came together to go through this journey with.
It's interesting. We get a lot of questions about subject matter and people having gaps in particular topics like accounting, finance, maybe statistics, kind of the things that they'll be doing in decision analysis, economics. But people don't necessarily ask about just being back in school again, which to me, that's probably one of the bigger startup aspects of the any kind of working professional program or any kind of MBA program, masters generally, is like you haven't been in school for a while. You haven't had homework for a while. You haven't had to like sit in class for a few hours and pay attention to something like that that's not directly related to your job in a while. All of those things are muscles that may have atrophied a little bit, and it may take people just a little while to get back into school mode. Was that your experience, Andrew?
Yeah, no, I'd say that's definitely the experience, right? Here it's a completely new ball game. I will say one aspect that helped was this case method way of learning, right? It creates this also sense of accountability, and that like you want to show up and be prepared to contribute to the conversation in a meaningful way. So I'd say it was an easier transition for me personally, right? I wasn't being asked to go and do some 20 question problem set, right? But rather it was, okay, read this case, digest it, try to understand, definitely tap on folks as you need to go up to speed, right? But it creates this sense of, okay, this is an interesting problem to solve, right? It's not just turn the crank on some sort of analysis. So that I found to be easier transition of, okay, this is fun. I'm with a team. We're solving a problem. There may not be a right answer, but we get to tackle that, and it wasn't as tedious as maybe the traditional homework. And the class discussions are fantastic too. You learn that, you start looking forward to those.
Yeah, I've heard that from many students. The idea of like working all day and then for part-time MBA students coming in the evening. And if you were to have a lecture or just a faculty member talking at you for 3 hours or so, that would be very challenging. Whereas, here it's discussion based, it's a case, it's conversation with your classmates. It's faculty are there in a Socratic role, kind of pulling out the conversation and perspectives in the room, much more engaging, and also something that feels much more like what you probably do on a day in, day out basis, right? You have meetings with people, you work together, you try to solve problems. Very, very real, very applicable to what you do.
Yep, absolutely. And all the crazy turns that the case method will throw at you, it keeps every day fresh and exciting.
I want to talk about the elective period too. So, right, so part-time MBA program, the first 18 months, this is cohort-based core curriculum. And then, as I mentioned, you enter an elective period where you can choose how many classes you want to take at a time, how fast or slow you want to work towards that 60 credits required for graduation. Um, Andrew, how would you describe the elective period? How did you approach this? Obviously, you finished the program on a 28-month path, which is the fastest path. So I expect that you're probably taking, were you taking about 3 classes per quarter?
Yeah, there were a couple of quarters where I took three, and then I actually did a four class quarter there as well towards the end. I'd say a lot of that was a little bit of an accidental artifact of just being so interested in everything that was being offered. Right, there'd be a particular quarter where it was, wow, there's three classes that I'm super excited to take. I can't pass up that, right? So some of that ended up just being an artifact of, well, I was just really excited about what was being offered. So I ended up finding my way onto the somewhat quicker path there. But electives were great, right? It allowed you to do that double click into something that caught your attention in core curriculum, right? Particularly, I had no idea I was going to have any interest in finance whatsoever. But yet, I take two core classes and I find myself in the elective period with the ability to really hone in on some of the aspects of finance that I found fascinating. The electives were great. I was excited to see that a lot of those being offered were, cross program, right? So I was able to get the opportunity to network and collaborate with folks outside of my traditional part-time cohort, which I thought to be fantastic. And lastly, the electives were just really fantastic at real world application as well, right? I recall I took an investments course, right? And one of the final projects as part of that investments course was actually doing an evaluation of your own personal portfolio. And it's fantastic, right, to get feedback like that in real time with, again, world-class faculty on things that affect me personally, right? I took a negotiations course, which in the case method, we were wrangling with our classmates in real time, which was fascinating. A lot of really cool electives that were not only interesting academically, but personally, and I couldn't get enough of them. But unfortunately, Darden kicked me out once I got enough credits. That's really where I found myself on the accelerated path.
And they're typically somewhere in the neighborhood of about maybe 3 to 4 electives offered per elective quarter on the part-time MBA schedule. And as you mentioned, you also have the opportunity to potentially join electives in other programs. For example, the Executive MBA program. Did you take an Executive MBA elective during your time?
Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed actually trying that cross format offering. Yeah, so I did a couple there where I went to Roslyn campus there on Saturdays and Sundays, and I particularly found during the elective period it was nice to have that offering, that ability to change the pace up a little bit, right? So in the part-time format, we've been doing this pretty steady cadence of Mondays and Thursdays for 18 months. Right, I found it nice to be able to just get a little bit of change of pace, a little bit of I'll call it fresh air, just a little bit of breath to try something new and different, but always having that part-time format to fall back into. And I maintained the part-time and executive format through pretty much my entire elective uh, course curriculum. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I know at least 30, probably the number's higher now, but last time I heard the count, at least 30 part-time MBA students had joined executive MBA electives, and we had some executive MBA students take some of the part-time MBA electives. Part-time MBA electives, just for the listeners' context, are offered on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening. So just to give you a little bit more choice, Wednesday's added to the mix, but you can take executive MBA electives. I think that's probably the most natural place to look if you're looking to take an elective outside of your program, because executive MBA, of course, is a working professional program. And as to Andrew's point, if you wanted to take an executive MBA elective, you would have to make that schedule work as if you were an executive MBA student enrolled in those classes, which are once a month weekend residencies with online classes during the week in between. Just another note as we're talking about electives. So Andrew completed the program in 28 months, which is the fastest path. To do that, to Andrew's earlier point, you have to take a few more classes per quarter than you were taking during the core. So mentioned in the core curricular period, students are typically taking 2 classes per quarter. To move faster, you're generally taking at least 3 classes per quarter in most of those elective quarters. And you might actually even take 4, as Andrew mentioned. And you have flexibility, right? We talked about the part-time MBA electives being on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday evenings. There's some asynchronous electives, which are fully online. We have executive MBA electives. You can do an independent study. There's lots of things that can be added. The last thing I'll mention is, let's say you're sort of wondering about what's the minimum that you have to be enrolled in the elective period. You have to be enrolled in at least one elective. So one is the minimum. The upper end is going to really depend upon the elective offerings and what you can feel you can make work with your schedule and sort of how you're thinking about the pacing, which Andrew kind of brings me to my next question. So it sounds like you almost sort of were accidentally finishing the program in 28 months. You were just scheduling classes you liked, but how did you think through the timeline you wanted? Because part-time MBA program can be completed anywhere from 28 to 48 months. Standard pacing is 33 months. You've got to finish it at the conclusion of a semester. So you have 7 semester plan, which is 28 months, 8 semester plan, which is 33 months, so on and so forth. How did you figure out the timing that made sense for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, initially it was very much okay. Take what seems the most interesting, and it ended up being a little bit more of a heavier load. And as we got closer to talking about graduation, which again really came up in a blink of an eye, started having those conversations with, not only the career center, right? They were talking about, well, what are you looking to do with your career? What does it look like if you want to be a switcher or a climber? Some of that might affect your timeline. So I had conversations with the career center, had conversations with academic advising, and they were able to help, paint the picture of, hey, this is sort of what your schedule would look like. Is that manageable for you? Here's what's coming down the pipeline. You keep saying you're excited about all these electives. Well, here's what's coming down in spring of 25. Do you want to hang around for something like that? But as I got closer, I got very excited about the fact of, okay, possibly retreating back to maybe more of some normalcy in life. So I was able to align really with this accelerated schedule of, okay, I can hit the gas. It might, be a little bit more heavy as I try to do that, but ultimately it would save me, finishing before May of 25. Now I'm here done in December, and I've got a few months back. But I will say I do miss my classmates. It is odd not going to Roslyn on weeknights. That became my normalcy. So I say I wanted to slip back to normalcy, but I've got to create a new normal now where I don't get to engage with all my favorite folks.
Well, we'll see them again soon enough down in Charlottesville in May. And I appreciate that. I mean, shout out to Lauren Lopez Maurer, who works closely with the Part-Time MBA students. She's the advisor for the Part-Time MBA program. She's really someone that works closely with students in terms of thinking through these kind of trade-offs as you're thinking about your timeline for completing the Part-Time MBA program. And to your point, I know a number of students who shifted to the May timeline, 33-month timeline, because of classes that were going to be offered in the spring semester, as well as just where they were in their career process. They wanted to have that kind of full year to work with the career team, kind of be in school and have those conversations with employers because of the career goals that they had. And so that is flexibility that you have in the Part-Time MBA program. And it's nice to be able to customize it and sort of personalize it in that way. So um, Andrew, I'm curious, do you have a favorite course or two that you took during your time in the part-time program?
Yeah, there's certainly a couple of courses that stick out. Oh wow, I wish I could shout them all out, really. But yeah, that investment elective that I spoke to was definitely a favorite. A second course I'll shout out is I took a behavioral decision making course across the J term. So I think we spoke briefly to that, but that was an offering in which you could essentially get an entire course done, really in a somewhat accelerated timeline in between really the end of the December term and when January classes really started back up in earnest again. There's this January term in which they offered behavioral decision making. I thought that was fascinating because here I had this whole technical background of here's how you do decision analysis, here's what the numbers say, here's the recommendation. But this course was a completely different flavor, different side of the same coin, in which it was, okay, numbers are great. This is how folks actually make decisions, right? Here are the biases. Here are the innate features of being a human and how we actually make decisions. Thought that was fascinating, and that was something I was able to implement in real time in facilitating decision making in my job. And then core curriculum also had some highlights. One I'll shout out there is the econ course that we were able to take. So that was actually being taught by the deputy chief economist at World Bank, right? So being able to tap into that type of faculty, and we were able to have conversations about, okay, what should the Fed do with interest rates when they make their decision this week? Right, and having some of that live conversation in an econ class in a topic that I had, not the strongest background in coming in was fascinating and something I'll carry with me for a while. So those are just ones that immediately come off the top of the head, but a lot of fantastic ones.
Yeah, for context, as Andrew mentioned, J term happens between the fall and spring semester. So it's a short 10-day term. In the first year of the Part-Time MBA program, students have the opportunity to take the professional advancement course. This is a career-focused course. It's 1.5 credits. This course is actually dual enrollment. Part-Time MBA and Executive MBA students take this course together, and it's a virtual course. And the final day of the course is a big sort of in-person conference. Of course, you can still dial in virtually if you prefer, but a lot of students come in person because there's all kinds of panel conversations with alumni. It's kind of a big sort of celebration, sort of capstone of this PAC course, as it's known, Professional Advancement course. In the second year of the program, it's interesting that PAC course can be taken in the first year or second year during that J term, but most students will take it in the first year. In the second year, let's say you've already taken PAC, you could take an elective, like Andrew mentioned, during that January term, but you would need to get the program team's permission to be able to do that. There's a short process that you would work through, and that's really there for folks who are looking, like Andrew, to accelerate, who want to get ahead on their credits. So yes, an opportunity to take an elective even while you're in that core curricular period, but again with program permission. So Andrew, I'm curious, do you have a favorite memory or two? Something comes to mind. Obviously, we talked about R1, R2, talked about some of these classes, but a favorite memory, something that stands out from your time?
Yeah, a lot of great memories. I'd say probably top memory would be for now until graduation, because I'm sure that'll be a fantastic memory. Is one of the closing events that we had at R2. We were actually able to have a nice dinner at one of the local vineyards there in Charlottesville, right at sunset. And again, it was a nice opportunity to gather with the entire cohort, take pictures with your learning team. Faculty showed up, so it was great to interact with some of those folks that you hadn't seen in 12 or 18 months because they taught you at the beginning of core curriculum, or as faculty that you're getting ready to engage with at electives. But that was a nice, I would say, poetic culmination of all of the hard work that had gone on in core curriculum and really set the tone for uh, building up the excitement again for electives. So I would say that beautiful event there at R2 and getting to spend the time with all the colleagues that I had grown close with.
Yeah, it's never bad to be at King Family Vineyards outside of Charlottesville. It's beautiful. And March it's starting to feel a little bit warmer outside. Sort of the spring is starting to come. And it's a beautiful, beautiful setting. That is one of my favorite events too. Certainly a highlight just as a staff member to be able to be there with everyone. And it's interesting. I don't know if it felt like this to you, but that does feel like kind of the end of a certain part of the program, right? It's a culmination of the core curricular period. It has this kind of celebratory feel to it, and rightfully so. You completed the core, you're well over halfway through at 34 and a half credits. You're on the downhill side entering the elective period. Did it feel that way to you?
Yeah, no, it absolutely felt celebratory. So it was weird, right, in some regard of saying, okay, hey, we do need to gear up. There's plenty of elective to be had here, but it was celebratory in one respect, a little bit of sad in the other, right? You mourn this loss of something that has become such a significant part of your life, right? Because I knew that there were going to be parts of my learning team. We had different interests. We likely weren't going to be taking any more courses together right through the elective period, right? So there was a little bit of that sadness there, but yeah, celebration for sure. But also trying to maintain that momentum to carry you into the electives, which I believe is a little bit different than what the executive MBAs do. I believe they do their second Charlottesville stint there at the end, but I really enjoyed having it in the middle there because it was a nice reflection period there to understand where's the program gotten me today, and there's still plenty of time for where I want to go in the future, right? So how do I set my path? And it's that good pause, take a breath. Where have I come? Where do I want to go? And I still have some time to adjust. So I found R2 was beautiful with that respect.
Yeah, it's nice. And you are entering a new phase of the program, right? Electives, as you mentioned, students will kind of move in different paths. They may be moving at different paces, taking different classes. There's a lot of optionality that comes in at that point, which is different than the first 18 months of the program, as we mentioned, that cohort-based experience that you've had. And so I'm curious, Andrew, as you reflect on the program, what's been the impact of your time at Darden for you? Maybe difficult to quantify at this point, but I'm guessing you probably had some time to reflect on this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first and foremost, the amount of knowledge that I've attained is more than I could have imagined. I didn't believe coming into this program that I'd ever be able to intelligently talk to somebody about cash conversion cycles, right? But I would say, again, to go back to the methodology of learning, it wasn't just rote memorization, right? I feel like part of the impact was a lot of the things that I am going to take away from Darden are going to stay with me for a very long time, if not forever. Right. And some of that goes back to the case method. I will never forget when I tripped myself up on the George's T-shirts case, right, which is a famous Darden case, right? But and I'm not going to spoil what the takeaway is there, but I will always walk away with what I learned on George's T-shirts, and I won't make that mistake again. So certainly that impact is going to exist. The relationships I built, not only with my cohort, but with a lot of the alumni I was able to connect with, that impact is more than I can probably tangibly put into words now. And a lot of the memories, right, that I'll walk away with. Again, a lot of impact from my Darden experience thus far.
How did your career goals evolve during the program? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, of course. So I came into the program, I'd say, very much as a career climber, right? I mentioned I had a lot of roles that I was very excited about pursuing, and I was looking for this MBA to supplement that background. And I found it did that very exact thing, right? I was able to get the promotions I wanted. I was able to be a more effective leader, a more effective communicator and manager, and a lot of the aspects that I was doing in my daily life. And then in talking with Career Center, taking the professional advancement course, right, starting to understand all of the doors that Darden opens up for you, right? And some of those happened, quite organically, frankly, right? It was in talking with alumni, and it was, hey, we're in the same industry, and what exactly are you doing? It's like, wow, that sounds fascinating. Tell me more. So having conversations like that, I was able to understand, there was more that was going to be available to me outside of Darden, and that's really where I started pursuing or considering this consulting type path. Right, that's a very strong path, I'd say, for a lot of Darden students. So I was able to have conversations with folks that were going through that, folks that had done it, and understand if that made sense for me. And really got a lot of interest in that. Started applying, started having again the conversations at the Career Center, and ultimately that transitioned me into a career switcher. So here at the culmination of this program, I will be accepting a new job at McKinsey. So very excited to start that venture here in February. And I'm going to go and give the consulting route a try. Again, really transitioning fully away from the nuts and bolts of the rocket, and gonna really look to exercise a lot of these new skills that I've developed in the consulting world.
Well, congratulations, Andrew. I did not know that. I learned some things as we get into these
Yeah.
podcast conversations sometimes. So that's wonderful. And I loved your point about networking. This is a conversation we've had a lot here on the podcast about how the career process plays out for part-time MBA and executive MBA students, because an internship is not going to be part of the process for students who are looking to make a career transition. And whether you think you're a climber or a switcher, networking is fundamental to this career process. Informational networking, just talking to people about what they do, getting curious, exploring, possibilities, asking them if there's other people you should speak with. I know it sounds slow, and it sounds kind of old-fashioned to people, but that is really kind of how this gets started. Obviously, it sounds like networking was an important part of your process.
No, it most certainly was. And there's, of course, formal networking events that you can leverage, but the networking also happens quite naturally, I'd say, at Darden. And I still recall R1, we sat down in a big auditorium. I think that was one of our very first events in which we would, get program overview and the like. And the person to my left, they said, "What do you do?" And, told them my job title. I said, "Well, what does that mean?" What, yeah, right? It's that curiosity, right? And the person to my left did it, person to my right. Started there on day one, and it continued on Mondays and Thursday nights, right before class. We'd sit down around the table, right, enjoying our dinners before class, and getting to have that again, natural, organic networking was. Those opportunities created themselves, so that was great, and also having the alumni to tap into as well.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Did you engage with any Darden alums as you were doing your career exploration, as you were figuring out if consulting and potentially McKinsey might be the right place for you?
I did, yeah. I certainly engaged with a couple of alumni. I'd say also another great benefit of what I found personally, a great benefit of this professional degree format is I was able to reach out to alumni. I wasn't able to do alumni from the part-time, not yet, but we do exist now. right? But alumni from the Executive MBA program, which a lot of them were still local to the National Capital Region, right? So it's very easy to have those conversations of, hey, I've got class at 6. I'm already going to be in Roslyn. You work in Roslyn. Do you mind if we, grab a coffee at 5 o'clock, right? And just chat for an hour. So having them geographically accessible was nice, but also I was able to have Zoom calls and just engage with them, even if you're not looking for a job. I actually recommend don't go into networking just strictly looking for a job, right? I wasn't actively looking, right? But in having just conversations and being curious and talking to people that I found to be doing super creative, inventive, fun, and interesting things, because that is bountiful out of Darden alumni, you can learn a lot. So that's what I found.
Well, Andrew, just a couple more questions for you. So what are you looking forward to in the months ahead? Obviously, maybe starting a new role is something you're looking forward to. But I'm curious, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, definitely a couple of things, right? So yeah, starting the new role, I'm sure I'll have quite a bit on my hands there. I'm a continuous learner, right? So while I'll be learning a lot there, I'm sure I'll be looking for that next venture to go and learn. I think no more degrees for now. I think we talked about getting spun back up into school. I think I'm ready to put the pencil down just for a little bit. I sure as heck know that my wife is ready for me to put the pencil down for a little bit. I'm trying to convince her that Darden MBA is right for her, so that'll probably be next. um, yeah, I think just again enjoying some time with family here, trying the new role, and yeah, just continuing to find the next thing to learn, and hopefully
I
engaging
appreciate.
with plenty of Darden prospective and current students as a newly minted alumni.
Yeah, I appreciate that. To your point, yes, we are now starting to get to the point where we have part-time MBA alumni. It's exciting to be at this point, and that number will only continue to grow as we have more classes join us. It's hard to believe. Here we are recruiting the 4th class. I can remember when we were recruiting your class, and we've seen sort of steady growth and interest for the part-time MBA program year over year. First class had 68 students. Second class 71, third class 72. That kind of 70 number is our target. I don't expect it to get much larger than that, but you sort of see the sort of growth as we've gotten a little bit more established as a program up here. Got a few classes here. We started to have students get to the elective period. Started to now have students that had some career success, and we got some career outcome stories to share. All of those things will help sort of accelerate things. The next thing you know, we'll be having a part-time MBA alumni reception. I can't wait for that.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, I can't believe we're already here. Feels like I was just talking to you during the admission cycle not too long ago.
Well, Andrew, last question for you here. What's a piece of advice you would share with our prospective student listeners, something for them to think about as they go forth on their own MBA journeys?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of the theme that we hit on, which is just to simply be curious, right? And be open-minded to what this experience can offer you, right? I went into the MBA program expecting very specific learning objectives and outcomes, and came out with so much more simply from the fact that you're exposed to so much more, right? And if you keep an open mind and you ask questions and you're curious and you take the whole thing seriously, right? You do your preparation, it can really open up a whole lot for you. So biggest piece of advice is really to embrace it, enjoy it. It oddly does go by quick, right? You might be hesitant to say, wow, that's a big time commitment. And it is, right? There's certainly a time commitment aspect of it. Your life does change, but uh, all for the better, right? You do find yourself missing it on the back end here. I can attest to that. So go in courageous and be curious.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew. It's been a pleasure, and so happy for you and your classmates. And this first pioneering class of part-time MBA students, it will be a wonderful day in May down in Charlottesville, where we'll get to celebrate all of you and your accomplishments. That will be a wonderful historic moment. So thank you for being here on the podcast.
Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
And that was my conversation with Andrew Rader, a member of our part-time MBA class of 2025. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at that's ExecMBA@darden.virginia.edu. And until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.